Welcome. My name is Adam Pratt, and I work on the Adobe Creative Cloud team, and we are glad you joined us today. This is the second installment in a series of virtual IT roundtables. Today, we're actually joining you from the 43rd floor of the Adobe office in Times Square, New York. It's a beautiful spring day here in New York. We're excited to be here, and we're glad you joined us. This series is an ongoing live stream series where we are covering topics related to issues that are important to IT teams that are supporting Adobe solutions, including Creative Cloud for Enterprise, Document Cloud for Enterprise, Adobe Sign, Adobe Stock, and so on. And so in today's session, we're going to learn a little bit from Adobe and from an Adobe customer about really the value of these new cloud services, not only to the end users, who are using Creative Cloud for Enterprise to do new work and really enable new workflows, but also to the IT teams supporting them. What's that mean from a license management standpoint, or from the angle of engaging with enterprise support? What changes for them and what are those benefits? And so I do have a few folks with me today. It's not just me here. I'm going to just kind of go down the line, and I'll have everybody else introduce themselves, and we'll get started in the conversation. So Noha, I'll start with you.
Good morning. My name is Noha Idel. I'm Customer Success Manager responsible for Publicis in North America. I have counterpart who support me as well. In EMEA, we have Marco Cucinato, who is also the Customer Success Manager for Publicis.
Excellent. And Rick?
My name is Rick Sullivan. I am the Operations Architect at Publicis Resources. I'm particularly focused on creative and production, and I work alongside a very small team of dedicated creatives and creative support staff.
Okay. And you guys are all based in New York, right? You guys are.
We are based out of Long Island City, as well as several locations here in the city.
Great. And Lauren?
Hi, I'm Lauren Meyer. I'm a program manager with our digital media team, so I support the customer success management team in working with our customers in onboarding solutions.
Okay, great. Well, thank you guys. We'll hear more from you throughout the session. Let me start just by setting the context a little bit, because most customers know by now, but we're changing things at Adobe. We've been on this transition years ago. About 5 years ago, we announced Creative Cloud. We transitioned from the Creative Suite. With that came a lot of new workflows. We released a lot of new applications. And kind of the ticket into a lot of those new technologies is this named user licensing. So this transition from serial numbers, which is familiar, but Rick, you and I were talking even before the session, nobody really enjoys tracking a spreadsheet of serial numbers. Yeah. We're all used to it. We kind of get used to that pain, but it stinks. It's not a good experience. And so we're migrating away from that to a new licensing platform. We call that named user licensing, and it's familiar to anybody who's accessing cloud storage services or Office 365 or whatever. It's this whole model of I log into my software and then I get this personalized experience. Just what I need, just customized for me, things like that. But as a part of that transition, just looking at my notes to make sure I get it all right, it's just important to remember that migrating to this named user licensing is what's required to get access to all the latest apps, versions, services, all these new workflows that we talk about, and we'll talk about in this session. And there's some key timelines on that I want to remind folks of. And so one of them is in October of 2018, that's going to coincide with Adobe's Max conference. So that's Adobe's annual creativity conference. We're back in Los Angeles this year, and I can't wait to be there. But that's also the time of year where Adobe announces and releases the new, the major new versions of our applications. So major new versions of Photoshop, Illustrator, the whole works, all the new stuff happens. At that point, if a customer is, if you as a customer are still on serial numbers, you'll still be eligible to download and access the latest security patches and things like that. But in order to access the full new versions and new features and services, it'll actually be required that you'll be on named user licensing. Otherwise, you'll be stuck on those old versions. For many customers, on our 3-year enterprise agreements, many customers, not all, but many customers will also have an expiring serial number event in November, so just a month after that release. So it's a great time, kind of a milestone to say, hey, if I want to stay up on the new versions, I might have an expiring serial number anyway. Let's go ahead and, this summer, or if you're on the other side of the equator, this winter, let's get this IT project done so that I can access all of that new technology. If you are in a situation where you're going to have an expiring serial number, Adobe should have already notified you. You already know about that, so it shouldn't be a surprise. But that could be kind of a motivating factor, a combination of factors there to get that project done. And then I'm also looking at my notes, just a reminder for the Mac users. I'm a proud Mac user, but as of September 2019, Apple's actually going to stop supporting 32-bit applications. So it's another kind of technology milestone to keep in mind, so that if you are on older versions, you're going to want to make sure you have the new versions, you're on 64-bit, and Apple's going to be deprecating that 32-bit support in their operating system. So kind of a combination of events that we want to make sure is on your radar, so you have the knowledge and the timeline and the lead time to get those projects done. So just, again, hopefully some helpful reminders there and some motivation. Noha, I'm going to switch to you. I want to get to know you a little bit better. Tell me a little bit, you talked about your role. You're a customer success manager. You work with Publicis. Tell me about how long have you known each other? How long have you been working together? What's that look like? And where'd you guys start?
So I've been supporting Publicis for forever, I guess. But I got to work with Rick, I believe, for the past 3 years now.
Yeah, even a little bit longer. We've seen each other at different events, Publicis events, before my position changed within the company. So we've known each other for quite a while.
Yeah.
And we started the work towards moving to named user licensing when Adobe announced that we went to subscription, and that users have to use their IDs to log in into the software. At that time, Publicis had to go through their own transformation as well, digital transformation, and they were standardizing on ADFS as well.
That's correct. Yeah.
So they needed to create their own system. So back in 2014, 2015, Adobe only supported Adobe IDs. And that was a big limitation for
major stone block, roadblock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a good start, but not enough for you
No,
guys.
yeah.
Okay. And what were you guys holding out for?
Federated IDs.
Okay, so single sign-on.
Single sign-on, absolutely.
Okay. And you had already done that for other projects or purposes?
Yes,
or?
we had other products that supported
Yeah.
single sign-on, federated IDs. So for us, that was really the only road that we could go down.
You didn't want to do something different. You're like, I've already done this.
Yeah, and
Once
to
is
be-
enough.
And to be honest, managing at the scale that we operate in manually is, we
Not
can't do
doable.
that.
Yeah.
Not doable.
So federated IDs, or what we call it type 3 IDs, was a mandatory thing to support an organization like Publicis, a worldwide organization.
Yeah.
And so that was the first thing we had to work with engineering, say, now we have to have support for federated IDs, and we have a great customers like Publicis who is requiring this.
Yeah.
So working with our engineers, the admin console, the ad cloud engineering team, we put the teams together. That's where
Yeah.
our partnership started. The Cloud Tech team had many interviews and researches with Rick and his team about what the requirements, what do they really need,
So we wanted to make sure we built what they were asking for, not what we wanted to build.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in reality, we wanted not just for ourselves, but obviously so that other enterprises could, leverage that same technology.
So we came in and say, yes, now we support federated IDs. That was a great thing, and we said to Rick, great, implement it.
Yeah.
Not quite.
Not quite. So and they're like, we don't have the bandwidth and we don't have the engineering background to put, to create that link to connect our ADFS to your admin console. We believe that this is something that Adobe has to create,
Okay.
because you're not just solving our problem, you're going to solve it
Yeah.
for others. And that's when we decided to build the premium onboarding team and hire the engineers to build that connector, that what we call now the user sync tool.
Yeah.
And that's how, throughout, nothing happens overnight. So while the engineers are building the tool, we were constantly testing it with Rick and other customers. And I'm looking at Lauren because that's when Lauren and her team became, a cornerstone of this whole relationship.
Yeah.
So I'll turn it over to Lauren to explain how the connection with the user sync tool and implementation.
So let's actually back up one
Before that-
question. I'll put this question to Lauren.
Yes.
I know you know the answer. For those watching, summarize what the user sync tool does, just so we all understand that. We get it because we're in this world, but if you
Absolutely.
haven't been familiar with this, what's the user sync tool
Does.
do for a customer?
Absolutely. So the user sync tool was built specifically to help our enterprise customers such as Publicis in the automation of creation and management of their end user licensing going forward. And so the user sync tool at a high level connects the enterprise directory system to their Adobe admin console, therefore automatically provisioning users from the directory that are specified to the admin console as a new user, and then also automatically provisioning them the license that they were aligned with based on that user group.
Cool. That makes sense. So essentially, you make sure you have the right software for the right people, and you're doing it in an automated way, so you don't have to you're not dealing with support tickets. Like your team is like, oh, Bob needs this, Kathy needs that. You can do that, you're capable of it, but it's a huge drain on your resources. You guys have better projects to do, frankly, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it was a catalyst. I mean, it's
Okay.
a bridge between our infrastructure and our IDP and obviously Adobe's system. So
Yeah.
without that user sync tool, we were dead in the water.
Yeah.
It was as basic as that.
Yeah, cool. So we're going to talk more with all of you guys about the process that it took to do that. Let's look at the goal, right? Sometimes you've got a challenge in front of you, but if you know the payoff is worth it, then you're like, okay, yeah, I'm going to tackle this project and it's worth it. So you guys have gone through this process, Rick. What's the upside? What have you seen in your teams in terms of, hey, they're able to do this, they're working differently. What's it add up to for you guys?
For us, it's been tremendous because first of all, from a license management perspective, it's an absolute. What you see in the dashboard is exactly what's out there.
So who cares about that? I mean, that's an IT thing.
Oh,
the end
absolutely.
users don't care, but you guys in IT.
Anybody who's paying the bills.
Okay.
Finance.
So that's important.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you've got a clear sense of I'm spending the money. I'm spending money on software licensing that makes sense.
Absolutely.
It's a sign. Because the other thing I've seen, I don't know if you guys have, if you'd admit to this, but I've seen a lot of customers who buy software and it takes a long time to get rolled out. I'll buy it and it might be a year before the users get it. So you've got a more
They
direct
cannot
path.
afford this.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
advertising agencies. They
Yeah.
need to have access to the latest
Right.
tool immediately.
Yeah, and that's the major advantage of the user sync tool, that you can configure it in so many different ways based on your ADFS implementation.
Yeah.
For us, we have a manner in which we operate where requests are made, they are assigned to a particular group in Active Directory.
Mhm.
That group gets some Creative Cloud or Document Cloud.
Yeah.
And from there, once that ID has been provisioned,
Yeah.
they simply log in, activate their product, and
Yeah.
use it, and just go about their
Yeah.
business.
So I want to clarify something. You say they make a request. So my understanding, that's like an automated request process, right?
So we have different ways of entering requests. So, for example, a requester can, simply make that request on the user's behalf, or the user can make that request. It goes through a process within our internal help desk system,
Okay.
and through the power of ADFS and that user sync tool,
Yeah.
it's able to provision that identity,
Okay.
and very, very quickly as
Yeah.
well. So
Cool.
it has really been a boon for us in terms of deployment.
Yeah. Because I asked that question because I've been around creatives enough to know I hear some of the complaints of well, I requested blah blah blah, and it's been weeks. Where's what? I'm still
Yeah.
waiting, and I've got this project, or I've got a client, a new format. I got to get this done. They can't be waiting.
No, and that's really, and you hit it right on the head there, a bottleneck of IT.
Mhm.
It's, I have to wait for someone to install it.
Mhm.
I have to, put whatever I'm doing, on the side until someone physically gets here and installs
Yeah.
it. With the way that we've configured it, our customers are able to get that ID. They're given instructions. Once they log in, they can feel free to install the products that they need at that time
Okay.
to get that particular job done. And again, it's empowering the user,
Yeah.
and it's been tremendous for us because it really has brought a sense of empowerment to the user, basically.
Yeah.
And they feel they're in control of their own software for once.
Right.
And obviously, we're still really in control of it.
Right. Yeah, yeah. But you're not having to deal with all these one-off requests. Like once they're in, they're in. So if I'm like a print person, mostly do print, and I need to do something for the web, or I do mostly video, but I need to create a poster for a project, I can just go get the tools I need, it sounds. Yeah.
That is correct.
Cool. So easier for them, as you said, it's empowering for them, and you guys don't have a million one-off requests for I need Premiere, I need this. Cool.
And traditionally, installing Adobe software, has been, kind of a challenge for, quite a.
Be honest.
Yeah, it's been a challenge. I mean, it takes
Yeah.
its time. I mean,
Yeah.
these are
It's big
fairly,
software.
it's big
Yeah.
software.
Yeah.
So, imagine that, having to, install it for one person, another person,
Right.
Self-service, instant, deployments,
Yeah.
all that has been, we've been able to achieve that by way of the user sync tool.
Yeah. What are you smiling about, Noha?
The multilingual as well.
Multilingual.
Yeah.
So right now they have access to the entire suite in all languages.
Okay.
And the way they package their software, they automated that when it gets deployed, it will be deployed by the machine language.
It senses the machine
It
language.
senses the machine language. In the past, they had to require
Scripts and tools and
Yeah.
a lot of pain. A lot of
And
pain.
as a global organization, if you're working in Paris or Dallas or wherever, like you don't have to have all those variations.
Yeah, no, there's obviously, cultural sensitivity, but there's
Sure.
also, the fact that people expect the software in their language.
Yeah.
And if you don't,
I know I do.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we've all seen, multilingual software, and it's, when it's not in your native language, it's a challenge.
Yeah.
So that was also a huge change for us, and,
Yeah.
being able to deliver that made a lot of people happy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool.
There was embedded benefit that we, we had to bring it up before. You would get a serial number per language.
Right.
Mhm.
You don't have that. You don't have to worry
You
about
just
that
have a
anymore.
license.
You
I don't
just
care
have.
what platform, I don't care what language,
Correct.
what
It's-
country, yeah,
You just hit it too. You don't care about the platform.
yeah,
It's one pack. It's the.
yeah.
And that's another advantage. I mean, obviously in today's modern IT, it's not just so much, Mac versus PC, but, we can support whatever, as long as you have that ID,
Yeah.
Yes.
that federated ID, you can use a Mac or a PC. It doesn't,
You don't
and
care.
or mobile, so
Yeah, yeah.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, so, so that's really helpful from the IT perspective. These folks, your creative users, they are entitled to the software. They can do more self-service, get what they want when they need it. What is that, do you have any examples of what that's empowered them to do? Like, are they doing new work or accessing new apps or working in new ways? Like, what's it matter to them that this is a new workflow?
For us, we've seen an uptick in obviously user experience and design. So
Okay.
anything from interface to animations.
Mhm.
So for example, we've seen people who traditionally have not used things like animation tools or After Effects, they've actually been using these tools and complementing them with Adobe XD and things like Character Animator, things that you wouldn't normally think
Yeah.
are enterprise products, but we've seen a lot of creativity around those particular tools. And again, because there's commonality in the file format, they can leverage, and obviously commonality in the interface.
Yeah.
Training this last, they can just jump right in
Right.
and play around. Be creative.
Yeah, yeah,
And before the named user licenses, the users were just given either, Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, that was their tool set.
like my
Now-
print tool set.
My
The four
print tool
pillars.
set.
Yeah.
Yeah, now that they have access to all the applications, they might download just the application that they are using, but for that specific job, and they see, oh, I might use Adobe XD for this, they'll download Adobe XD and use it. So they're discovering new products and putting new products to work because it's available. They don't have to go and request it. It's available.
And the other thing, just in case anybody's freaking out on the video stream, in the situation we're talking about, your users are entitled to the Creative Cloud for Enterprise, the all apps.
The all
That's correct.
apps.
So,
yes.
so you're not like getting a surprise bill for anything. You've already
No,
paid for this.
You've already paid for the license.
So-
that was big for us
Yeah.
because in the past everything has been, as it was said, siloed into editions or versions,
Yeah.
years. Now we have one tool set, many applications. You install what you need at that point in time, and if you need something in addition to that, you can come back and install whatever you need.
Yeah, that's cool. What about, you and I talked a little bit earlier about Adobe XD. So for the folks on the video who are maybe not familiar with it, it's a new app from Adobe. We just released the first version last fall at Max. So this is a new tool for experience design, UX, UI design, great for mobile apps, mobile web experiences, things like that. Sounds like you guys are starting to experiment and adopt with that. So that's a new app. What's that look like for you guys?
For us, it's been great because in the past, this has been the realm of very specialized kind of creative, people who are doing interface design, and now we've seen this shift where, even the more traditional creative can actually lay something out. This is what I think, this would look, best in this format, whether it's iPhone or even the web. I mean, XD again can scale to any viewport. So they're able to not only design this, but pass it on to these, user experience designers who can then refine it. And again, because of the storyboarding and all the visual means that they have at their disposal, they can make something that is really pretty amazing and looks, not only professional, but it's, you can present it to a customer. So
yeah, that's cool. And I love the fact that it's interesting. I've had so many conversations recently about design where for so long we cared about how it looked, and that is no longer enough. I need to know how it works. Like if I'm going to pitch that to a client or whoever, looks are not enough.
The famous Steve Jobs quote: "It's not just how it looks, but how it works."
Right. And so their ability to do that with Adobe XD, it's not like I can just show you how the pixels are going to look in Photoshop. Adobe XD is going to show them how it works, how it clicks, how the screens change, like with the whole app experience. So that's cool.
And not only that, but the fact that it's tied into services like the CC libraries, where you have common elements, your logos, or anything that
All
needs
that
to be
branding.
standardized, branding. And you can just drag and drop, and it works seamlessly across all the apps. And to me, that was also another major reason why we wanted to have these federated IDs, so that they can share these elements and be able to, again, repurpose these things in a clean way and not have to email files and not have to email logos and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's cool. The other thing, I think one of the things I appreciate about you guys a lot is this, what I think is kind of a progressive approach of like, I want to empower my creative users, right? Like I hired them because they're creative. So why would I step back and say like, no, you can't have access to that, or you're a print designer, or I won't give you video apps. If they're creative and they got a project, like unleash them, right? Like,
and these days you have non-traditional designers, people who are, really talented, not just designing in Illustrator, or Photoshop, but XD, the web, and like you said, video. So it's, you want to empower those people to, make your business that much better.
Totally. And I appreciate that angle of like, it is better for my business. Like they're gonna do better, more and better work for us. Actually just had breakfast with somebody just like that who print, web, digital, UX. She was telling me about her After Effects project. Like it's design is less narrow than it used to be, and so equipping those folks with all those tools is really key.
And it used to be that After Effects was the realm of video editors and people. It's dramatically changed over the years. I mean, Adobe has done a fantastic job integrating all these products so that the interface is so similar across the board that people just feel comfortable and they start playing around with it, and they're able to deliver things that 10, 15 years ago it was impossible.
Used to have to hire somebody just to do that. Now people are more multidisciplinary.
Absolutely.
And that's great. So we talked about a little bit about the process to go to named user deployment. We'll talk about that in detail in a minute. Talked about some of the benefits to your creative users, what they have access to. Let's zoom out a minute from a business perspective. What's that mean? I think you've talked about continuity. Sometimes you talk about content velocity. Like, what's that mean from a business perspective?
So from a business standpoint, we look at it, first of all, licensing. I mean, we already sort of touched on that.
Yep.
The fact that we can obviously get a clear and precise number of users, who's using what, and the reporting mechanisms in the Creative Cloud are obviously fantastic for that. So beyond the licensing and the deployment, for us, I think I'm gonna have to say, it's just kind of so difficult to point one thing out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that was actually one of the things I was going to get to, but yeah, I'll just jump into that. The partnership between us and Adobe, I think, from a business standpoint, has been fantastic.
Okay.
And out of all of the vendors that I've dealt with throughout the years, Adobe has always been traditionally the one that is tapped the most. Obviously because we use their software the most.
Yeah.
But as of late, and while using these tools, our business is that much better because we're able to, like for example, get support directly from within the dashboard. We don't have to, do anything special.
Yeah.
Our support staff can either handle it on its own through the dashboard,
Mm-hmm.
or direct perhaps Adobe if the need arises to talk directly to the customer, which is huge for us. There's no middleman, and again the customer gets the help that they need,
Yeah.
and on their way and get that job out the door. Basically.
So when you say the customer,
When
you're,
he calls customer, it's really his end users.
Yeah, your end
Because
users.
he's an IT,
yeah.
every end user is his
It's your
customer.
Right.
Everybody who is support.
Yeah. So that's an interesting angle where you use the admin console
To
to
open-
open support tickets, maybe because you need help with something, or maybe you're just connecting the dots. You're like, I have a user
Yeah.
who's struggling with this, or this isn't working as expected. Instead of me being a bottleneck and get roped into this, I'm just gonna connect that person, Adobe,
Exactly.
and you're good.
There might be an issue with the software. I mean,
Yeah.
they might have encountered a bug, and I want to make
Yeah.
sure again that that I'm able to relay the proper information.
Right.
And if I am able to get the customer themselves, the end user, to directly talk to support,
Yeah.
it's a win-win. And
Yeah.
again, we have that data in the dashboard so that I can then document it and pass it on to our internal staff and make sure that they're aware if it's a bug or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be.
Right.
The reason for this, we don't open support to end users. Like
Mhm.
the end users don't see the admin console.
Mhm.
Only certain people who are support admin can log in the support cases.
Yeah.
So as a support admin, you open the support case in behalf of your end user.
Mhm.
And what Rick is saying that the ticket gets opened, and then they could put in the name of the user and his email or
Cell phone number.
and cell phone
Oh,
number,
yeah.
and our support agent will contact that end user directly. So that's very important.
Yeah.
And now we're not perfect. Sometimes certain support cases even
Yeah.
maybe they don't get addressed.
Yeah.
And what Rick is able to do, if he sees that the support ticket is maybe taken,
Resolved, yeah.
it's not resolved timely
Right.
manner,
We'll jump in.
then he will jump in,
Yeah.
and a lot of times he contact me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, if it's something ultra important, obviously,
Yeah.
we'll take charge, contact Noah and say, hey, listen, we have a serious problem here.
Yeah.
We need this ticket escalated.
Right.
And, so far, knock on wood,
Yeah.
we really haven't encountered too many issues of that
Yeah.
type. But when we have, it's always a comfort to know that you're gonna have somebody on the other
Yeah.
end of the line who
Yeah.
will escalate that further up the chain until you get someone who can help
Yeah.
you.
And in an organization as big as yours, I'm also thinking of the angle of like, you have so many brands, so many offices, to have a
So many ways
centralized
of doing
view of that.
things.
Say that again?
So many different ways of doing things. I
Yeah.
mean, each
Yeah.
user handles their own creative in their own way, so
Right.
it's not a one size fits all.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's great. Super cool. So let's rope in Lauren.
Yeah.
You've been, we haven't involved you as much. Tell us, so we heard about how you guys started to work together. Lauren, when did you get involved in the process? And maybe as a part of that, tell us about your team.
Sure.
And how you guys work.
Absolutely. So I'm a program manager with our premium onboarding team, and this is a team that's available to specific enterprise customers, and Publicis being one of them. Noha, who explained the relationship previously, we finally were supporting federated IDs via the admin console, and now Publicis is ready to go. However, who is going to help them actually get this all up and running? And that's where our premium onboarding team came in. So myself, program manager, we have dedicated solution consultants, as well as product specialists that we employ within our team. And we met with Publicis on a weekly, if not
weekly basis,
multiple
if not
time
more,
a week basis,
if not more,
to start to formulate a plan.
Okay.
We knew what the end goal was, to migrate Publicis to the named licensing model, but how were we going to get there? And so creating our implementation plan around the fact that we now had this user sync tool developed and available, which was very much impacted by Publicis partnering with us to test and figure out what the best approach was for that tool. Once that first iteration of the tool was available, we had an implementation workflow, and we essentially started the process of setting up their environment, not only to work then with the federated ID type, but then also set the tool up within their environment and connect all the dots between their directory system and the admin console.
Got it. So I'm going to go back to Rick, because I've got some questions for you. This sounds like kind of a complicated process.
It is.
And for you guys it is. I think, I don't think every customer will require like bi-week, twice a week calls, right? So I've talked to customers who did this in a week or a weekend or whatever, right? But different customers, different organizations, different levels of size and complexity. So Rick, can you just give us a ballpark, size it up? How big are you guys?
So I can't give you an exact number, but I am going to say that we're much higher than 15,000.
Okay.
So
15,000 end users.
End users.
Okay.
Yeah. And that is definitely across both CC and DC.
Okay. So Creative Cloud, Document Cloud.
Yep. Creative Cloud, Document Cloud. One thing that I wanted to touch upon, which we haven't really mentioned yet, is the fact that the user sync tool is open source.
Okay.
Which is I take my hat off to Adobe, because you as an individual, if you have certain skills, in Python for example, you can go in there and you can further tweak this to meet your needs. And that's something that is not really common. I mean, most sync tools are, especially of this sort, are very proprietary.
It's a black box.
It's a black box basically. This is different. And one of the things that my team had requested from Adobe, and Lauren spearheaded for us within Adobe, as well as Noha, was the fact that we needed a group structure. And what I mean by that is, we have all these users.
remember these email threads.
And we have all these users, but we needed to group them logically. So we have some.
You don't want just a flat list of 15,000 people.
No.
That's unmanageable.
Yeah, we needed to have a means by which we can group these users for billing or reporting purposes. And we needed to have that obviously be maintained within the dashboard. So we approached Adobe about that. We pitched the idea. It was greeted well.
Good.
And a while later, obviously we got this implementation, and it really changed the adoption of the Creative Cloud and Document Cloud within our environment, because it allowed us to further tweak and balance the system, let's put it that way, without getting too specific.
And I was going to say, to that point, Publicis has been a great partner because they were an early adopter of our user sync tool. When they came to us with these more specific requests, they actually were things that would benefit all of our enterprise customers with the solution. And so they continue to volunteer testing this out with us, which we always appreciate.
Kind of stress testing it.
And due to that, the tool has now been publicly released for over a year. We've got hundreds of implementations in place now with our enterprise customers, and the evolution of the tool is very much in thanks to the work that Publicis has done to partner with us on testing it.
That's great. So I'm curious, Rick, have your development teams, have they taken advantage of that open source customization, or is it just comforting to know what it's possible?
So that customization actually, I mentioned the open source because that was kind of how it was first pitched. You know, this is open source, so you can kind of do it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, obviously, we're not experts in some of these areas.
Sure.
So, you know, my leadership basically said, you know what, let's partner with Adobe.
Yeah.
And when we say partner, sometimes we mean, you know, help them do it for us.
Get them to
Yes.
do it.
You know, it was one of those. So they provided these hooks that
Yeah.
we can take advantage of, and it would automatically just look into ADFS and.
And that's part of what they'll help you guys deal with the grouping.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's why we had, you know, such a high number of meetings also, because obviously we need this to be accurate. We can't
Yeah.
have this, you know, start, you know, adding and removing users
Right.
or misrouting users. We can't have.
Or double counting, you
or
don't
double
wanna buy
counting.
more software than you
No.
need, like,
So
get what you
It
need.
needed to be accurate.
Yeah.
And that it is.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
great.
so they tested the user sync tool for a very long period of time.
Okay.
And once they felt like it's ready to go, that's when they turned on the switch.
Yep.
And they switched for the people in the US first, right?
We did the
You
North
migrated
American, yeah.
North America first.
North America, then Europe, and finally Asia Pacific.
So it's not like turn the flip. They do everything after a lot of thinking, a lot of
Yes.
testing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And with, you know, the biggest issue for us going into this was user impact. We want to make sure that people obviously log in, that they get the software, and that, again, it's a simple process, and that it works 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And the fact that we had very few calls in regards to missing software, or, you know, someone not being able to log in properly, is a testament to the quality of the sync tool and the work that was done behind the scenes.
Yeah.
We like to call it the set it and forget it tool,
Yeah.
because
Set it,
that's the whole
forget it.
goal, is yes, there's a bit of work up front, and to your point, we have had implementations done within an afternoon, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
And then there's more complex environments like Publicis, which is a
Yeah.
global entity that
Yeah.
needs some more time and care and testing.
Yeah.
But once you've put that work up front in place, then you really are enabling your IT teams to take a step back and let that automation tool do its job.
Yeah.
And there was also, you know, to be quite frank, there was some hesitation from within, you know, our own leadership, whether that it could be done, you know, in this manner or not.
Okay.
So it was quite stressful.
Yeah.
So the fact that this went off in the way that it went
Yeah.
is a true testament to the quality of the work that Adobe has
Yeah.
been doing there.
So to make sure we understand that concern, was the idea that like maybe this is gonna end up taking a lot of cycles, this is gonna take a lot of like babysitting.
Babysitting, confusion, failure,
Yeah.
software being missing, people not being able to work,
Right.
you know, all of those.
So you didn't have like the downtime outages issues, and then as Lauren said, it is kind of a set it and forget it, like it's up
That's
and
right.
running, it's self-managing, and you're not
Mhm.
doing this all the time.
Yeah, it's entirely managed by our internal provisioning teams, our
Yeah.
ID management team. And, you know, we've talked about this in the past, managing these Adobe IDs and doing it manually, you know, for thousands upon thousands of accounts is just impossible.
Yeah.
So we're able to, without worry,
Right.
manage this. And, you know, someone leaves a company, their ID is deprovisioned,
Yeah.
that account is gone. And,
Yeah.
you know, again, Adobe also does an excellent job of having data retention, so that, you know, obviously that account is no longer there, but we can obviously have access to their
Right.
data, so.
It's an interesting thing you bring up, because if there's customers out there that are watching this saying, okay, I need to do this project, I haven't done it yet, their first concern is, okay, so how do I get all my users provisioned? Which is like the obvious question, but honestly, it's not the most important question. Like what you're talking about is getting people in there, it's not hard. Like you could do it this afternoon. The process of managing it long term and having people change roles or leave the organization so that you don't have unused software, you don't have like piracy concerns of like, oh, people who don't work here anymore still have our software, or
Exactly.
or even worse, our serial number. Like that's a huge risk. And then you've also got the data retention issues of like, oh, do they still have client files? What's going on there? You can kind of like seal up all of those, even in a way that's automated. Like you're not having to deal with it, and it's a part of that process. That offboarding, that's huge.
Yeah. Let's just say I sleep well at night these days.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, that's cool. That's great. And the reality is, I look at our admin console. I think it's good. It works. It's fine. But like, nobody wants to grow up and use an admin console. Like it's
No.
boring. Like you don't do what you need to do and get out. And so if I can,
But it's the plumbing.
Yeah.
It's very important.
yeah,
You have the proper plumbing.
right,
Yeah. Yeah, and again, we only, to be honest with you, our use of the dashboard is as sort of a reporting tool
yeah,
and a means for us to verify, whether someone has an account or not. But we don't live in the dashboard, which is fantastic.
yeah.
So,
Right.
big
That's a
plus.
good quote.
Big plus.
Yeah, and like it works, but
Yeah.
that's not what you want to do. Like
No.
you've got, frankly, more important projects
Yeah.
that add value to the business other than like adding and removing users.
Exactly.
That's good. What were you gonna say?
Communication.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's very important. We got the users, they got their licenses. What were the challenges for you to communicate to the users that now they have access to the software?
Yeah.
Because how did you notify them?
So that's always a challenge, obviously, which is why we broke down that transition by region, because it allowed us to focus and hone the communication to the languages involved, first of all. But it also, I think it also had the effect where by us communicating directly with a particular set of countries, we could work directly with the staff, whether it was at the help desk level or the local field level, and again, minimize the chances of this going wrong. And we were able to very, very quickly get people onboarded and people to sign in, and we made it very simple for them. Our instructions are just a handful of lines. Even most creatives, myself included,
Yeah.
ourselves included, really.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to sit there and read a 5-page,
Yeah.
how to log in and
If
no.
it's 5 pages of how to log in,
Yeah.
it's not a good
If
experience.
if it's not,
Yeah.
in reality, if it's not one paragraph or less, a lot of the creatives
too
are just
hard.
gonna, they're gonna blow it off. And, we also wanted to ensure that people understood that, if they were using, a different implementation of the Creative Cloud, because we did have other businesses who licensed it prior to our global agreement,
Yeah.
that, we want to make sure they logged in properly. And again, a couple of screenshots, small amount of text, and, they were logged in.
That's
So
great.
we were able to tackle that, pretty simply, actually.
Yeah, that's great.
So we got the software in their hands.
Mhm.
They know what they have. The second challenge that we're working together on is enabling, and awareness of what the software is, what it does. So we constantly engage in hosting either webinars or on-site visits or
Even using the great Adobe iOS tutorial app.
Yeah.
Again, and the Adobe does a fantastic job maintaining their online tutorials. So
All those
we
learning
want to,
resources.
there's a lot for people to tap into without having to write your own, and it's already there.
Yeah.
Don't
Good.
bother writing
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
And because of the challenge, we created a brand new program at Adobe. It's called the Adoption Program. And we have, Erin Duggan is running that program, and we're working with Publicis to see how, just focus on maybe Adobe XD in certain areas, or Adobe Dimension for designing in 3D, on more focus. So even though it's big, but we're working also on a small level.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, and I think the training itself has been highly beneficial for
Yeah.
our users, because for one reason or another, a lot of the creatives also see these applications as silos. So by bringing in Adobe and having them show what you can actually do with the totality of the Creative Cloud, and again, it could be just 4 programs or 5, but the fact that you can take elements from Illustrator, or Photoshop and reuse them, in XD or After Effects. It's tremendous, and it sparked, a lot of conversations, internal conversations. Should we start doing things a little bit differently? Maybe we're not doing this efficiently.
Yeah.
So again, that's been a huge boom for us.
So I want to put a plug here. So we talk about Adobe Sensei or Adobe's artificial intelligence, and many of the features in our current applications are benefited or powered by Adobe Sensei. But to get the word out and to let these users discover that auto masking in Photoshop is now empowered by Adobe Sensei, I'm putting together a webinar for all Publicis users coming up on the 27th of June, where we will host it via webinar, and any, hopefully you could help me out
Yes.
here, promoting the webinar. You see how I sell myself? So they could log in and they could see all their current applications and how they can improve their workflow, and how they could produce more content faster, because velocity is very important, using the current tool they have. So these webinars that, thinking about how can we reach all this population, the only way we do it is via, webinars, and people just log in on the web. And anybody with their federated IDs,
Yeah.
they would receive the email via communication. Hopefully you're communicating that webinar to them, and then they could take advantage
Tune
of
in and learn.
tune in and learn. So in addition to that, we have expert services that are also available in your admin console, so your support team can log in and create, open, sign up for an schedule an appointment with expert services. I don't know if you haven't,
We haven't actually yet, but we haven't had the need, but I'm glad it's there.
Yeah, expert services, as an enterprise customer, you have unlimited access to these sessions. They're hosted in different regions, and there are we could put in
all the different topics.
topics, so they could zoom in on that one as well.
Yeah, it's cool.
And one of the things that we didn't really touch upon before, as part of the training, was sort of the introduction to these new applications and services, not just obviously Adobe XD, but Adobe Dimension, which I think is something that is quite remarkable.
Yes.
And as time goes on, it's going to gain a tremendous amount of usage, at least from my perspective, because it simplifies 3D, and it simplifies 3D in a way that is beneficial to creatives who need a very fast and very easy way to mock something up or visualize something in a sort of three-dimensional or physical way.
Yeah, that makes sense. And as I'm thinking through the conversation that we've had, thinking about Adobe XD, Adobe Dimension, the recording, you and I talked a little bit about descriptive process do you bring to the table?
Now broadcast. We're back on. It should be a wide shot.
Still a delay for this
No broadcast.
one. Oh, okay. So yeah, now it's back to the actual.
Okay, that's gonna do that for like a second, and then,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep. We're good on.
We're good, all right.
We're good?
Yes.
All right. Hey folks, sorry we had a technical glitch there with our connection to YouTube, so sorry for the interruption, but hope you're still there and hanging with us. Lauren, I wanted to transition to you because we've had a great conversation, but I'm thinking for the customers who want to stay up to date on technology, keep up on everything, they're going to need to complete this named user licensing project. You're on the premium onboarding team. How do customers connect with Adobe? How do they get the kind of help that Rick and his team have had?
Absolutely. So we would encourage you to contact your Adobe account team just to kick off your process of migrating from the serial to name license model. There are many online support tools available, not only through our Adobe website, but then also a full guide on how you can implement the user sync tool yourself. You can also gain support from our Adobe support team to implement that tool as well. So there are many avenues available, both documentation-wise and live support from Adobe on hand to help you with this migration.
Cool. And you guys have a pretty predictable, I mean, you guys have done this a ton. You guys have a process.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
the guide essentially walks you through it from beginning to end, describing what the change in model is, what to expect, and then how to set up your environment to work
Who
with.
to get involved.
Yeah,
all
exactly.
that
The
stuff.
stakeholders involved internally, etc. So
Yeah.
it's all there online to help you, and then you can reach out to Adobe support to have more in-person virtual assistance.
That's great. Super. So Rick, we appreciate you being here today. I've just got a few kind of parting comments and some resources I want to recommend, but I wanted to thank you for being here and thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, thank you for being a great customer. Any parting comments from you just about this overall experience and the relationship that we've had with you guys?
You know, it's always the same in IT with with change. I mean, there's always something new. I mean, 32. We were just discussing 32. The deprecation of 32-bit in Mac OS next year. Take the time to do this username deployment.
Yeah.
Make sure that you implement it, well, that you follow best practices, not just with what Adobe actually outlines, but your own internal IDP processes. Make sure that it's synced up, and that way, it simplifies it greatly. And have an idea going in of what you want this experience to be like for you. But I also, wanted to touch upon the trust. I know that's not something that we always are accustomed to having with major corporations like Adobe, but I can honestly say that since I began to work with Noah and Lauren, that it's been a wonderful experience. I've never felt that we've ever gotten the wrong answer or no answer at all. And when we have encountered problems, we've always had a clear route of escalation. So if someone out there is worried that they're going to be out on their own doing this, you're wrong. Just make sure you go ahead and switch the username deployment.
Yeah, good. I'm glad that's been a mutual good relationship. That's awesome.
It has been.
That's excellent. Great. Noha, any parting comments?
Yeah, in the name of all the CSMs or customer success managers, our job here is to bring value to our customers, accelerate the value, and we strive to be their voice within Adobe and bring the resources at the right time.
Yeah.
So we're here to support our customers, and that's our mission in life.
Yeah. Well, you do a good job of it. Thank you.
Thank
She does.
Nobody forgets Noha. Once we know Noha, nobody forgets Noha. So you're a great part of the team. Thank you.
Thank you.
So as we wrap up, we appreciate you guys being here. I'm just going to look at my notes here so I don't forget anything. But in the comments below, in the description below there on YouTube, we're going to make sure we have the links to a couple things. Three of them that I want to call out. One is what we call the IT Learning Hub. So Lauren's referenced some of these resources. So this is an online resource. It's really a collection of all of the top IT resources, white papers, security reviews, learning resources, tutorials, guides, best practice guides, you name it. Lots of great resources, so make sure you check out the IT Learning Hub. The second one I want to mention is a new resource of enterprise deployment tutorials. So these are video tutorials basically on how to plan and deploy Adobe software in the enterprise. It includes getting started with the admin consoles, identifying or kind of configuring identities, managing domain claims, all of that stuff. If you're kind of a DIY person, you want to just get started by yourself and you can run with it. We have a lot of customers who just manage it themselves. It's a great learning resource that you should check out. And then the third one that I want to mention is specific to Acrobat. We call it the Acrobat IT Network. So this is an on-demand online community of IT administrators for Adobe software from around the world, focuses specific to Acrobat. So if that's an area of interest, we want to make sure you check that out as well. So thank you guys for being here. Looking ahead, I'll just give you a few pointers. We have a couple items coming up on June 26th. We're planning a roundtable. This one will be broadcast from London, and it'll focus on security. In July, we're going to talk a little bit more about security and resources for customers, including some new online training resources that are coming up for IT, so that'll be July. In August, we're going to have another IT roundtable that's focused on education customers. Obviously, some unique challenges there with normally a lot more users and users coming and going every semester. So some different dynamics there. We'll cover that. And then we'll continue to have more topics throughout the rest of the fall. So thanks for being here. Thanks to Noha, to Rick, and to Lauren for joining me today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll see you guys next time.